A show that tackles the big issues affecting the BVI and the rest of the Caribbean. Searches for answers to today's big questions and gives viewers a unique perspective on developing stories. Follow the big story with me, Kathy Richards, only on GTV. This show is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Cyril B. Romney Tertola Pier Park, NV Salon, Nail Spa and Barbershop, Tisley Cross Deliciously Smooth Cider, and Digicel, simply more speed, reliability and entertainment.
Tisley Cross Cider. Tisley Cross Cider. Deliciously smooth.
This is The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition. We want to talk to ourselves in this edition, and my guest to help me do that is none other than the doctor. Dr. Albert Thompkins. I want to welcome you to the set of Big Story. It's no political talk, it's none of those. It's one that we focus on ourselves.
Thank you for having me, I appreciate it.
All right, before we get off to getting into the topic, we want to discuss mental health, brain health. But for those who are not quite familiar with Dr. Thompkins, give us a little background as to who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Dr. Albert Thompkins, and I am chiefly the EAP counselor, the Employee Assistance Program counselor for the government of the Virgin Islands, but I also do some pro bono counseling for Family Support Network. And so I've been doing that for a number of years here, and I'm glad to be here today.
Awesome. So when you talk about doing counseling for the government, many people would not have thought that your government has counselors.
Right.
Why this is so important in a government system?
Great question. And so EAP, which is actually within the Human Resource Department, we provide free, brief, professional, confidential counseling to every public officer and their immediate family. Because the reality is, if you have a problem or issue, you don't leave your problems at home. You actually bring them to work, because we're human, we're not robots. And yes, we're supposed to get the government work done. However, if there's an issue, it's actually an economic incentive to have someone on staff to actually provide assistance to them. And so the idea is to have a place where officers can come and get their needs met in terms of their emotional, behavioral situations going on. We also support supervisors when there's issues with their team.
You're kept busy?
Yes, we are kept very busy. But I love what I do, and I think we have a great impact within the public service.
Awesome. Well, I can't go too much into the government aspect of it, because you're here mainly to represent the Family Support Network.
Yes.
So shift it over there.
Okay.
You find the time to volunteer your services to the Family Support Network.
Correct.
And we understand also well that Family Support Network is a non-profit organization that not only look at trying to get foods on people's table or clothes on persons' backs, but they work so hard in taking care of their mental well-being.
Correct. And so, yes, we know that there is like you said, the physical needs of the food, sometimes shelter, but they also come with issues in terms of domestic violence. And with that comes with trauma. A lot of times it comes with different emotional issues, and so they provide a counselor so that we can address those issues as well, because it's not just your physical need, it's also your emotional and your mental needs. And so the idea is to help them have a holistic approach towards helping that person and their family.
All right, so while you do that, we appreciate it, but we would love to know how we who do not tap into the services of a Family Support Network, we who do not see you in a government setting, we are out in the public. Define for us mental health.
Great question. So mental health overall speaks about a person's behavioral and emotional response to and how they're coping to situations. So we all have different terms of stress, and so how do you respond to that from an emotional perspective? That's what mental health is, and we all have mental health. If you're alive and you have an active brain, we all have mental health. However, over the years, unfortunately, there's been some stigma regarding mental health, and so you may have a up days one day and a down day another day, and that has to do with your mental well-being or your mental health. So that's what it is in a broad perspective. I always try to compare it from your physical health and your mental health. They're both equally important, but a lot of times we neglect the mental health side of it.
What I know there are three main areas of your mental health. It's your emotional, your psychological, and your social well-being. I did some little bit of it. Yeah.
Okay.
So in what you do, which aspect you find us neglecting more?
That's a great question. I think it depends on a person's situation, but we've been trained to allow at least one emotion to be okay. So, for example, men, for example, we're allowed to be angry, right? And that's probably the only emotion we have. So we pay attention to that, but sometimes we neglect the psychological perspective or even the social perspective of it or behavioral. And so it's important to look at the entire aspect of your well-being and your mental health because they're both equally important.
How do I assess myself to determine where I'm at really?
I'm glad you asked that question because that's so important because, like, again, we're human beings, right? So we have emotions and we have needs. And so if you find yourself not appreciating certain things like you used to, and it's a long period of time, then you might need some assistance. You might need some evaluation. You might need someone to say, you're going through something, get some professional help, right? So look at yourself, decide if, I'm sad for a long period of time, or I'm in a dark place and I can't seem to get out. Those are some of the signs that maybe I need some assistance. Maybe I need someone to look at myself and say, you need help.
Sometimes you're in situations where it's a negative situation and you are trusted in it for an extended period. It's something that has to go through a process. Yeah. And you were there dealing with the emotional and psychological those components of it. You're stuck there. How does a person work themselves through situations as those?
So there's a couple things you can do. One, first you have to know who you are individually and say, okay, this is my norm, this is my baseline. If you see yourself deterring from that, at that point you can say, okay, you have to be real with yourself. I need assistance. And even sometimes it's important to have person that are close to you say, you know what, I've noticed that, you're crying more than usual. You're going off on your children more than usual. You need some help. So at that point, you should sit back and say, okay, if my foot was broken, I would go to see a physical doctor. Now that my emotions may not be aligned properly, why don't I go to someone that can help me with that in terms of my mental or behavioral perspective? So look at those little small things and say, okay, I'm noticing a pattern for a long period of time, and maybe I need to go talk to someone that you trust regarding it. And so it can be a pastor, it could be one of your mentors, it could be someone you see an authority figure that you trust. But I would say go to someone that you trust, that you realize they can help you. And if they can help you, then there are plenty of resources out there that can assist you.
It's so much more difficult for persons who are introverts, I'm assuming.
It could be. But then again, the extroverts, they tend to hide it as well because they're always outgoing and you don't really notice it at first. But when you're home by yourself and you look yourself in the mirror, you may not be right at that point. And so I think it's an equal balance, but it's about knowing who you are and where your baseline is at.
Yeah. If you fail to take care of your mental health, what are the likely outcomes?
Yeah, it can be numerous because, again, because life is up and down, you can end up variety of things. You can maybe not work you may not go to work like you normally do. You may neglect your children. You may neglect yourself. And I think that's the most important part. Realizing you have to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of you, no one else will. Right? So you have to get to a point where you're ensuring that what they call the ADLs, the activities of daily living, ensuring that those are in place and happening regularly. and that you're actually meeting those needs. So if you find yourself in a situation where, okay, I'm neglecting my responsibility, I don't feel like being with my children all the time. Now, there's sometimes, of course, they get on nerves, and that's okay. But to the point where you don't want to interact with them anymore, get some outside assistance. Ask for some help, and don't be ashamed or embarrassed about it, because we all need each other. We need help, and it's okay to ask for help.
Yes, and when you're not stable mentally, you're stressed out and all of that, it can have an adverse effect on your body.
Yes.
They say stress is the biggest illness there is in the world.
Yeah, stress is a killer. And the thing about
that, say killer,
but it's true. It does, because it can mimic an extreme, and it can mimic a heart attack almost, having a panic attack. And so, matter of fact, I had a client a few weeks ago who had signs of palpitation and they were sweating profusely. And I said, go get yourself checked out. They went to the doctor. The doctor says, your heart is fine. So actually, you're under some undue stress. Your subconscious is bothering you about something. And so it's allowing you to continue to think you can't get any rest. And at that point, then it's okay, let's deal with the root issue. What's really going on? So you're right, it can impact your physical health. Your mental health can impact your physical health greatly. So it's important to take care of that in addition to your physical health.
You said a word there just now that struck with me, rest.
Yes, rest is so important. I always say there's 5 things you can do to improve and maintain your mental health. And one of them is rest. Get some sleep. Go to bed at a decent hour. And I know we live in a 24/7 world where things are going on in the news and social media, but rest is so important that it actually resets your body once you get sleep. So it's important to get to bed by 10 o'clock.
Every night.
I know it's challenging, but if you stay up past 10:30 or so, your body begins to think it's actually a new day. And so even though you're laying down to get rest, it doesn't have enough time to reset and allow your cells to rejuvenate, allow your mind to rest and begin to be at ease.
But doctor, when you go to rest, with all the stresses and worries on your mind, and you tell yourself that I'm going to sleep, in that spiritual realm, as you would want to call it, when your eyes are closed, these things are plaguing you. Is your body relaxing in any way? Or what's happening with your brains? Because you said, okay, I went to bed last night, but you know to yourself that it was not a good night.
Right, rest. Now, and that's important to realize and recognize that. And once you realize and recognize that, then we have to figure out, okay, so what are the root issues? What's really going on with you, right? So I would suggest turn your phone off at 9:30. Begin the process of preparing to go to bed. Get into a routine, because our bodies and our minds, we love routine. Once you begin to get in a routine, you'll notice after a while, you actually fall asleep in a decent hour. But of course, at first, if you're not used to it, it's going to take some time to get there. But the important thing is to actually discipline yourself to do it. And that's part of the problem. Sometimes we're not disciplined enough. We want to be on the phone. Let me respond to so-and-so. Sometimes you have to just cut it off and say it.
Yeah, but there were those issues where the phone and the things around you are not part of your routine, and that is plaguing you. You have situations that you and for goodness gracious, you can't sleep comfortable because it's there. Simple things like let's say you don't have a stressful situation, but you have work next day, and you know that list of things that you have to do is a long one.
It's a long
so
one.
You go to bed and all you're doing is thinking about that. You're not rested. How you get yourself out of things like that?
And don't get me wrong, we go through seasons of that, right? And it's okay because we perform at a high level and we're concerned about our day, and that happens periodically. But if you find yourself doing it chronically, then that's an issue. And so if you find yourself, okay, I'm thinking about work, sometimes we have to just let it go. Allow the work to stay there. It's going to be there, because the reality is, if something happens to you, they're going to get somebody to replace you in that moment. Right? So it's more important for you to take care of you and say, you know what? I know I got the report due. I know it's probably late, but it's okay. I have to be okay. I have to get my rest. Because if I don't, then I can't finish the report. And now what? They get someone else to do it, and now maybe you'll be, taking a little leave, take a little suspension, So take care of yourself first. And I think once you do that, everything else will follow. And I know it's challenging, but you have to do it for your own sake. I always give the analogy, when you're on an airplane and then the plane's taking off, they say if the altitude changes and the pressure changes and the thing comes down, put the mask on you first, and then your child.
Take care.
Because a lot of times I know mothers are superheroes, right? So they take care of the children, everyone else, and they forget and neglect themselves. But if mom is not there, then
what?
Yeah.
And the other aspect before we close this discourse is, you know that with what you do at Family Support Network and in the government, you deal with persons on an individual and on their family levels. But there is a community also. How do you surround yourself with the right type of people to help your lifestyle to be better? Or how do you support those, even if they're not in your circle, that are going through trying times? How do you be empathetic? How do you be a support network?
That's great. And so I believe that as a community, it's important to have these discussions out in the open, right? And be attuned to what people are going through and realize we're all human, we're all having a human experience. And you can relate, you may not be able to relate specifically to their issue, but you can relate to their pain. And say, listen, I'm here for you. And that's the one thing, we don't want to be real about the things we've been through. We want to be quiet about it. No, we say, how you doing? I good. You're not really good. No,
you see, as of late, I've been saying, I'm good enough for today.
That's good.
It's not all right, but enough is
for today. And that's good. And sometimes I tell my clients, we say, take it one day at a time, and that's good. But under these times, sometimes you take it 1 hour at a time. You do. And say, okay, I got through from 12 to 1. I'm doing good. Let's take an assessment. Let's breathe. Let's relax. Let's think about, some of the things that make us happy. And then we'll take for the next hour. And after you notice, you see yourself going to 2, 4 hours, 6 hours, before you know it, at the end of the day, and you've made it. You've made it another day. And I think that's the important. There is hope at the end of the day. But if you can't see the hope, go from hour to hour. Or get someone to help you to see that hope. Because the hope's going to take us to the next day, and before you know, it'll be another year, and you say, I've made it again. Yes. So don't allow your present situation to deter you from your ultimate goal, because sometimes we're so focused on the one little spot, we neglect the entire table. But life is such vast, and sometimes it's not as bad as we think, because it's always in our face. And the thing about mental health is you have to look at the whole entire scope. I used to be a suicide counselor, and that was the issue mainly with persons who wanted to commit suicide, was the fact that they felt there was no hope. And so my job as a counselor is to show them we can make it. And I'll help you get there. I'll work with you to get there, and that's what we do.
Awesome. And as we close, who takes care of the counselor?
Great question. So again, I compare the mental health to the physical health. We have some great doctors here, so when one of those doctors get injured or if they get hurt, what do? They have to go to another doctor.
Yes.
They can't really diagnose themselves. They can't prescribe themselves medication. They got to go somewhere else. So same thing for the mental health. Every counselor needs a counselor. Every therapist needs a therapist. And quite honestly, when my mother passed away 2 years ago, I had to get counseling. I needed it. My wife said, "You have a problem. You need a counselor." And we sought someone, and they helped us out. Matter of fact, part of our training is to be counseling, so we can see on both sides of the couch.
Wow.
And so yes, we do have persons that we need to talk to.
All right. Your closing remarks to persons who may be shy to go to places like the Family Support Network.
What I would say is I would encourage you to seek help, regardless of how you may feel about it. Because the reality is we're here to help each other, and the resources is there for you. So I would encourage you to put your pride down and come see how we can assist you, because we're here to help. We're confidential, and we are there to provide assistance as you go through the process. We're here to hold your hand and walk you through the process, and you're not alone. We're here to help you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Albert Thompkins. It was a great conversation. These are things that we need to hear from time to time. And I want to thank you for joining us for this edition of The Big Story. Remember, your mental health matters for you. Thank you so much for joining us.